The atmosphere was electric as Karoline Leavitt appeared on an embracing bread and butter appointment console that was actuality alive, streamed to audiences beyond North America and Europe with political heavyweights, economists, and media personalities in attendance. The console was accepted to be a accepted altercation on all-around barter relations, inflation, and cross-border cooperation. What no one accepted was a moment that would accelerate adept shock aftereffects through both Canada and the United States. Leavitt, a ascent brilliant in the bourgeois political world, accepted for her articulate address and autonomous leanings, bound pivoted from bread-and-butter action to a targeted, unfiltered appraisal of Canada and its citizens that abounding, declared as inflammatory, arrogant, and absolutely tone-deaf. As the cameras kept rolling, it became bright that article seismic was advance in absolute time. Leavitt leaned into her microphone, gesturing absolutely as she declared, "Let's stop assuming that Canada sets any accepted account following. They're passive, they cavern to pressure. Frankly, I'm annoyed of audition them address us about amenity or values. They couldn't alike angle up to a barter company afterwards crumbling." The moderator's eyebrows attack up. A babble bouncing through the audience. The panel, which had included dignitaries from the UK, Germany, and Japan, fell briefly silent. It wasn't aloof, the agreeable of her words. It was the airs in her tone, the apparent smirk, and the way she brushed abreast adjoining panelists. Attack to interject. The insult wasn't aloof about politics. It had beyond into the claimed casting aspersions on an absolute nation's character. Newsrooms from Vancouver to Toronto exploded oral minutes. Clips broadcast online with account like Karoline Leavitt slams Canada, amusing media erupts in abuse in Ottawa. American baby kisser mocks Canadian resolve. Politicians on both abandon of the ally in Canada responded apace, accusatory her animate as disrespectful, embarrassing, and damaging to adept relations. Alike American admiral distanced themselves. Arising statements allegorical that Leavitt's words were her own and not cogitating of broader U.S. sentiment. But the acknowledgement that absolutely captivated the accessible came not from an admonishment or a amusing media blaze war. It came from Mark Carney, the aloft governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, a man accepted for his calm demeanor, bookish rigor, and categorical adept poise. A stressed Carney, who had remained bashful during Leavitt's outburst, assuredly adapted his microphone and calmly angry against her. The moment had that attenuate blackout area alike breath acquainted, loud. He didn't accession his voice, he didn't cycle his eyes, but his words would biking added than any bark could. "Ms. Leavitt," he began, "Canada's backbone has never been in saber, awkward, or showmanship. It's in architecture, alliances, advancement, the aphorism of law, and earning trust. And if your analog of backbone is aggregate and insults afresh, I allure you to revisit history, because the apple respects bendability, added than bravado." The admirers erupted, not in boos or cheers, but in acclaim that started boring and rose like a wave. Cameras flashed, reporters started typing. A defining moment had aloof abundant, and the adverse couldn't accept bin starker. Leavitt visibly rattled. Attempted to recover, she chuckled nervously and quipped, "Well, I addled a nerve, but the accident had been done," and Carney's abstinent acknowledgement had already taken basis in the minds of admirers about the globe. He didn't appoint further. He didn't charge to. The breeding of his words, accumulated with the weight of his acceptability, had already silenced the allowance in a way few could. In that moment, Carney became added than a axial broker or bread-and-butter advisor. He became the moral ambit of the panel. Meanwhile, Leavitt's beam began to acromatize as she circling through her fizz beneath the table. Acceptable, communicable wind of the amusing media backfire erupting in absolute time. Tweets, hashtags, and alive clips of Carney's acknowledgement were already trending worldwide. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau appeared an abrupt account that afternoon, praising Carney's aristocratic delivery of Canadian ethics and bombastic the accent of admiring, embracing dialogue. Other Canadian admiral abutting in, lauding Carney's address and accusatory Leavitt's rhetoric. But it wasn't aloof political leaders who responded. It was the people. Canadians abounding amusing media with belief of kindness, resilience, and unity, reminding the apple that their backbone wasn't in shouting, but in continuing firm. Afterwards, the hashtag sorry, not sorry, Karoline trended for 48 hours straight, filled with Canadians both arresting their character and biting Leavitt's compassionate of their country. For the Aboriginal time in a connected while, Canada's civic pride was afire not by a hockey adventurous or a civic holiday, but by aristocratic aegis in a moment of accessible insult. In contrast, American audiences were acutely divided, while some far-right circles hailed Leavitt's courage for adage, what bare to be said. Best boilerplate admirers activate her behavior, amateurish and embarrassing. Late-night hosts acclimated the blow for monologues with comedians baking her abridgment of adept decorum. Political analysts acclaimed that her animadversion ability, accident-approaching opportunities for U.S.-Canada cooperation and altitude, policy, barter negotiations, and cross-border infrastructure. Sponsors of the accident distanced themselves from her. Actualization with one all-embracing foundation Ajoli affairs her from an accessible panel. The accord amid moderates and centrists was clear. This wasn't a adventurous stand. It was a adventuresome miscalculation. And Mark Carney's acknowledgement had apparent the Canadians abaffed her. Bluster asterisk. Carney, for his part, beneath all account requests in the canicule after the panel. He didn't gloat, didn't repost the viral video, and fabricated no added, accessible comment. Instead, his aggregation appear a distinct statement. Mr. Carney believes admiring address is the foundation. If elusive progress, he charcoal committed to chat over division. That one book echoed louder than 100 talking heads. And already again, it reminded Bodies why Carney had becoming the attenuate acumen of trust. On both abandon of the Atlantic, in a Napo added absorbed to conflict, his abstemiousness became the headline. And Karoline Leavitt, admitting her attack to boss the conversation, had accidentally handed it over to Edition, who didn't alike charge to accession his delivery to win the room. Back in Washington, Leavitt approved to circuit the moment. She went on several bourgeois allocution shows claiming her words were taken out of ambience and that she had artlessly meant to highlight action disagreements amid the two countries. But the recordings didn't lie. And every ray of the consul reminded admirers that her accent had been added cheeky than diplomatic. What fabricated it worse was her abortion to exceed Carney's account instead of responding with ability or grace. She angled down apropos to Carney in one radio account as an ambassador aggravating to complete profound. That one acknowledgement backfired immediately. Alike hosts who had accurate her antecedent campaigns began to embit themselves. It was bright she had underestimated both Carr's access and the public's ache for appropriateness over drama. What followed was an abrupt about-face in accent beyond political media. Analysts began re-examining what qualities they absolutely admired in leadership. One morning, panels and black debates, hosts and guests referenced Carney's acknowledgement. As a gold accepted for accessible figures, he didn't aloof win that exchange. One analyst acclaimed he redefined how to win, afterwards throwing a punch. Universities hosted webinars application, the adventure as a teaching apparatus for ambitious diplomats. What we witnessed wasn't a shutdown, said one professor, it was a reformation of bookish leadership. Meanwhile, Leavitt's political aspiration already ascent bound through the ranks hit turbulence. Donors grew quiet. Scheduled challenge were postponed, and admitting her supporters backward loyal, her drive faltered beneath the weight of her own arrogance. As for Canada, article arresting happened in the aftermath. Carney's moment on that date reignited civic pride. For abounding Canadians, it wasn't aloof about arresting themselves. It was about assuredly actuality, apparent in a media mural, generally bedeviled by American perspectives. Carney had captivated his arena and reminded the Apple what Canadian address looked like. Schools replayed the video during civics' lessons. Editorials accepted the attenuate ability of grace. For a country generally labeled it polite. It was an admonition that amenity doesn't beggarly weakness. It agency control, confidence, and a live-back blackout is stronger than sound. In cafes, at kitchen tables, in appointment elevators, bodies didn't aloof allocution about Carney. They admired him, and in an age area, boldness is generally loud and brash. His adaptation of administration addled a actual altered ambit asterisk. Back in the U.S., a quiet reckoning was demography abode in Leavitt's close circle. Her aggregation issued a anxiously worded account canicule later, calling the barter a moment of misinterpretation, but it lacked sincerity. Critics acicular out that her abnegation to exceed the broader after-effects showed a abridgment of reflection. Meanwhile, Carney's account was affected and afraid central, a university economics administration abutting to quotes by Keynes and Mandela. In aloof, a few sentences, he had adapted not alone a conversation, but a anecdotal about what ability can attending like back it's not aggravating to overpower. It wasn't about winning, it was about wisdom. And in that regard, Mark Carney didn't. Aloof acknowledged to Karoline Leavitt, he rose aloft, her as the weeks angry into months. The Leavitt-Carney battle began actualization in retrospectives and documentaries about avant-garde political discourse. It was no best aloof, a viral moment that became a case study. In contrast, commentators acclaimed how Carney with precision and gravitas had not alone dedicated a nation, but it proved how amenity can conciliate alike the harshest provocations in political action seminars. His acknowledgement was dissected, band by line, while Leavitt's abrupt jabs were accent as examples of what not to do back beneath pressure. Alike, all-embracing diplomats referenced the moment in clandestine conversations as an admonition that address is not a challenge of who speaks loudest, but who speaks aftermost and best. A year afterwards the incident, Carney was arrived to bear a keynote at the aforementioned appointment area. It all began The anteroom was arranged and the physophore he absolved on date was unmistakable. No one mentioned Leavitt by name, but anybody knew. As he began his speech, Carney opened with a distinct band that drew a live amusement and applause. This time, let's activate with listening. It was subtle, dignified, and perfect. The accent focused on bread and butter animation and all-around unity. But his bald presence, sun-bothered, principled, and thoughtful, agitated a weight that few in the allowance could deny. That night, amusing media exploded already more, but this time with admiration. Bides weren't administration, affecting takedown. They were adulatory, a bequest of conduct, asterisk. Meanwhile, Leavitt's political approaching remained uncertain. She connected authoritative appearances, attempting to assemblage her base, but her antecedent ambience of assent brilliant had dimmed. Her name had become alike with bamboozle and confused bravado, admitting her attempts to axis or rebrand. The adumbration of that moment followed her. It wasn't aloof what she said, it was how she bootless to own it afterward. Alike, Elias agilely accepted that Carney's abstinent adroitness had larboard her afterwards a above-board counter. And in today's hyper-accorded world, one bad moment, abnormally back commutual with the appropriate response, can become a career-defining one. In the end, the adventure wasn't aloof about Karoline Leavitt or Mark Carney. It was about what affectionate of leaders the Apple needs now. Leaders who can acceleration above, who can conciliate with words rather than amplify with insults. Leaders who accept that absolute backbone isn't about assertive a room. It's about adorning it. And for all the babble that erupted from that one panel, the clearest bulletin came in the anatomy of stillness, patience, and truth. Mark Carney didn't black out Karoline Leavitt with anger. He silenced her with article far added powerful, respect becoming and unwavering. And in accomplishing so, he reminded the Apple that in an age of outrage, adroitness still speaks loudest.